some community news before we get going with our show today. Congratulations to the cast and production of East-West Players in downtown Los Angeles of La Cage aux Folles, starring our very own John Briones, directed by Tim Dang. Make sure to get tickets at eastwestplayers.org. At gusto naming bumate sa lahat ng ating mga Mother's Embrace Legacy Awardees for 2016 mula sa Kababayan Today, si Mrs. Epi Adriatico, si Mrs. Fructuoso Antonio, si Mrs. Maria Caparos, Mrs. Aurora de Castro, Mrs. Rosario Garcia, Mrs. Consuelo Castro, Mrs. Lydia Espiritu, Mrs. Magdalena Ormita, Mrs. Modesta Suarnaba, at si Mrs. Brigada Coloma Taganas. Thank you to Ms. Rosemary Mejia for her generous support, members of the United Bicolandia of Los Angeles, Mia McLeod and McLeod of Associates team, and other individual supporters who have given so generously for this event. At simulan na natin ang All Things FilAm with Anthony Ocampo, the author of the book, The Latinos of Asia. Dr. O, take it away!
Hey everyone, welcome to All Things FilAm. I'm Anthony Ocampo, aka Dr. O. The month of May is now officially Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This AAPI Heritage Month, I have one simple message. Stop forgetting Filipino Americans. Recently, the New York Times featured a short documentary entitled Conversations with Asian Americans on Race. In the piece, they featured Asian Americans of different ethnicities talking about the impact of race on their lives, being called chink, being bullied and beaten by classmates, even being likened to Saddam Hussein. It was great to see Asian Americans featured in the biggest newspaper in America, but guess what? There wasn't a single Filipino in the documentary. The omission of Filipino voices speaks volumes about the narrow ways that the media understands Asian American experiences. At nearly 3.5 million people, the Filipino American population is second only to Chinese. In fact, there are twice as many Filipinos as there are Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese Americans. When I did more research on the New York Times, it turns out that Filipinos were mentioned in only 6% of the articles on Asian Americans, even though Filipinos are more than 20% of the total Asian population. These patterns ring true even in California newspapers, where Filipinos are the largest Asian American group. I had the chance to co-edit a new book called Contemporary Asian America with my former professor, Min Zhou, where we talk about the rich cultural diversity within the Asian American population. Unfortunately, the media's understanding of Asian Americans is still pretty one-dimensional, which means the media often forgets Filipinos because we don't fit the prescribed definition of what they think it means to be Asian American. We all know that the Philippines is a former U.S. colony, which means that the Filipinos have been socialized by American norms long before stepping foot onto U.S. soil. To the media, Filipinos might seem too American to fit the, quote, typical Asian American story. Filipinos are also forgotten in Asian American stories because we share so many cultural characteristics with Latinos. Over 80% of Filipinos are Catholic. We have so many everyday words that overlap with Spanish. Filipinos have last names like Gonzalez, Rodriguez, and Torres. And the media just can't deal with this kind of complexity when it comes to racial identity issues. Imagine if the New York Times had decided to include Filipinos in their conversation with Asian Americans. Maybe they would have gotten a more comprehensive version of Asian American experiences in the 21st century, one that just doesn't rely on white Americans as the primary reference group. So to all the major newspapers out there, do us all a favor this AAPI Heritage Month. Stop forgetting Filipino Americans. I'd like to thank NYU Press's blog From the Square for publishing this response to the New York Times and giving me permission to share it on Kababayan Today.
Ako po ang inyong kababayan na si G. Tonji. Maraming salamat po.